Welcome to Ability Assistance. I'm Phyllis Jones, Chair of the North Andover Commission on Ability Assistance and host of Ability Assistance here on North Andover CAM. Today, we are joined behind the camera from our crew from Greater Lawrence Technical School, Carly Jones and Cassie Bonanano, and our director from North Andover CAM, Ray De Silva. Our guest today is Melissa Rodrigues, Town Manager of North Andover. Welcome, Melissa.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a long time coming, huh?
Right.
We've been talking about this for, gosh, almost 2 years now.
Yeah, I've been here about 18 months, so I'm excited to be here with you today.
I'm excited to finally be able to do this, so thank you for coming on. Let's start with a real basic concept.
Sure.
What is the town manager's office?
So the town manager is the chief executive officer for the town. So basically, if you think of it like a regular corporation, I have a board of directors, which is the board of selectmen, the select board, and I'm basically the CEO. And then town meeting is like the shareholders. So we're basically running a business here. A lot of it is customer service based. Sometimes we say we're running almost 20 different businesses because we have trash and fire and all these different services that we give. But we're really a customer service based organization.
And for clarification purposes, you don't run for office. You've been hired and appointed by the board.
Right, I'm appointed by the 5 select board members.
Well, that's good to know because not everybody's an old political junkie like me who knows that. So thank you for explaining that. And just in case anybody was wondering, do you live here in North Andover?
I don't. I live right in Danvers.
Okay, so you're familiar with the area.
I am. It takes me about 20 minutes, but I'm pretty new to Danvers too. I grew up in Everett, and I just moved to Danvers about 3 years ago.
Okay, but you're familiar with the Merrimack Valley. You're familiar with the North Shore, so that's good that you're familiar with who and what we are up here.
Yes, it's been nice to be closer. My last community that I worked for, which was a lovely community, was about an hour and a half away. So being closer to home has been a real benefit for me.
I can only imagine. We've had a really rough little over a year now with COVID. How were you able to manage all of that? I mean, each one of us with our own families, we're having our own difficulties, and managing a small company is one thing, but you're managing a whole town. How were how were resources divided by the state, to you, to the select board?
It's hard, right? It was hard. It was a struggle, but we have a really good team here. We have amazing employees. We have great volunteers, which really are the base of everything that we do. And then additionally, we had residents who really came together to do the right thing, to support each other, and I think that was really beneficial to us. We were unique in that way. But it was hard. It was hard for everybody, right? And sometimes I go to the schools and I talk to the students about COVID and what we've been through. And it's okay to admit that it's been difficult. It's been a difficult year for everybody. But it also puts things in perspective. What's important? What's not important, right? And so we can sweat the small things a little bit less, right? And try to focus on what really makes an impact for the community.
Now we've got the schools opening up to all the students based upon state mandate.
Good news.
Well, moms are like this.
I certainly am.
But maybe not the kids so much. Kid to kid, it might depend.
Of course.
I also saw, I believe on Facebook yesterday, that the town library is starting to open to the public Tuesdays and Thursdays, if I'm remembering properly.
That's right. We're going to have some limited hours. We will still have by appointment for people who are maybe a little more cautious and want to come in when it's not as crowded. So we're kind of having a mix of things. We'll continue to have curbside, which has been very popular.
My husband has loved that.
It's really been great, and I hope it's something that just stays because it's really a convenience for people.
Yes.
I remember having a newborn baby and thinking everything should have curbside and drive-through, and suddenly we're there. No more newborn babies for me, but it's still a luxury. And Town Hall is now open, so you can come into Town Hall.
By appointment or
Nope, you can come on in. We do have somebody at the front who does COVID screening and takes all your information for COVID tracing purposes, but we're open and we're welcoming everyone back. And the senior center is open and doing programming.
That's fantastic.
It's really exciting.
That's fantastic. And the youth center is also opening up.
Well, the youth center never really closed. They've been really amazing down there, and we're able to do all of their summer fun programming last year, have continued programming in kind of a new way, right, by doing it like as cohort-based programming. But it's been really effective. They've done such an amazing job, and they're getting ready for next summer. The beach will be open again. We'll still have some restrictions, but not as many as last year. We're really excited to be able to kind of starting to have hope, right? And I think that hope is something we're all going to hold on to over the next few months as we get back to normal.
Yes, most definitely, most definitely. Now, I'd like to start with the political piece of it, town meeting.
Okay.
You have graciously listened to something that I've been beating the drum for a couple of years, changing the town. It's not the Constitution, it's the
charter.
Charter, thank you. So that, because people don't realize that our commission is a chartered commission mandated by the state.
Yeah. So it's our rule book, right? The charter's our rule book.
Exactly.
It's how we run our government.
It's from the people who, look at it from the federal point of view. It's the Constitution for the town. And so right now, the town charter says we are the Commission on Disability Issues. And that was written, gosh, who knows how long ago. And we go by Commission on Ability Assistance. And you have drafted and supported the name change, which has to go to town meeting.
Yes, and the legislature.
And the legislature.
And that might be something we need to take on statewide, because the commission certainly, and all the commissions have certainly changed.
Exactly, and we go by ability assistance because we're not going by what you necessarily can't do, but what do you need help to be able to do like everybody else. I actually stole that concept. We used to have, maybe it'll hopefully come back again, something called the Abilities Expo that came to the state, and it was a convention. Sometimes you had nonprofit groups showing their stuff. You had merchants that sold specialized product, and I looked at that and went, that's a lot nicer
It is.
than disability.
It's much more inclusive, and that's something we really need to have a goal as a community and in government, to bring that inclusivity to everything we do.
Which is why we had this wonderful logo
Love that.
updated by one of the Greater Lawrence Tech students
It's amazing.
a few years ago, and he put in there a little something for everybody. So I'd like to thank you for taking that up, because
Thank
that
you.
means a lot to us.
No, I'm very excited, and I think, I said to you earlier, I think it will be a no-brainer at town meeting, because how can you not support that, right?
But people like to stick to old ways sometimes, but I think enough people will be, if we can change from Board of Selectmen to Select Board,
Right.
perhaps maybe we can do that. So enough with the politics.
I love it.
But more appropriately, you've also been listening to our requests for different things regarding town meeting. People don't realize that the town warrant, some people can't read it. Not because they're incapable of reading, but they're blind or have vision impairments, and they need to rely on Braille. You've been talking about getting that done up in Braille. How are you doing that? How are you going to be doing that? I assume the select board is behind getting that done.
Well, absolutely. So I've been working a lot with the moderator, Mark DeSalvo, on coming up with different solutions to make town meeting a place where everyone can gather, because it's really, in its roots, what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Exactly.
Is making it accessible to everyone, because we all have a voice here in town. So last year, we were actually able to print them in Braille as well, which was super
Wonderful.
amazing. We have a Braille printer at
I
Town
know.
Hall. Who knew? And so we can print pretty much anything in Braille, which is great. So we were able to print the warrant in Braille last year, and the motions, for anybody who is interested in the motions, because the motions are really just as important as the warrant, for people to really understand the action that we're taking. And then we've been working on a few other things as well. Last year we did have closed captioning for people who were following along on their mobile devices. So that is really helpful. Typically we have a screen at town meeting, but this year, June 15th at 6 p.m., we'll be back outside again. And so we're not able to do cart services, which is something that I typically had done. So instead, we are working with the state to try to get some sign language interpreters. And so they're working on that, but we will, again, have the closed captioning for those people that have access to a mobile device, which is not everybody, right? And we're really trying to build accessibility to everyone. And so we're working on that as well, which is really exciting. And we're trying to see, it's easy inside to get the headsets.
Right.
It's a little hotter outside. And so I know that Brian here at CAM has been working on trying to get headsets as well. So we're hoping that town meeting will be a place where everyone feels welcome.
And for people who don't know, could you explain what CART service is
Sure.
in case they don't know the difference between that and an ASL interpreter?
So CART services, in my experience, is someone who comes and they, on the kind of the scene, do interpretation up to a screen. So the words are all written down. It's helpful because we can put it on a huge screen and then everyone can see it. You're not trying to look at your smaller device. So for me, it's something that I actually had the request in Sudbury from a resident who was deaf. And feeling it from his perspective, he was on the Council on Aging. Yep. And he was saying, I'm deaf, but it's not just me, right? People speak quickly. It's a big room, a lot is happening. And so if I can read it, I find it helpful. And it was interesting because the first time we did it at town meeting, I noticed everyone was reading along, right? And so I felt like when I was speaking, I was really reaching people more because they were hearing me, but they were also seeing me.
Yeah. I'll be honest with you, sometimes if I'm, watching something that automatically has closed caption, I'll also be listening and looking. I think it's very common for people to do that, and people probably pick up more when they do that.
Sure.
Now, what about we do have people in town who English is not their native or primary language. Do we have the ability to have somebody there who interprets?
That's a great point. If there's anybody who needs that type of assistance, if they reach out to me, I can make sure that we have an interpreter for them that night. We do have many employees who work for the town that do speak different languages, which is fabulous and really has been such an asset during COVID, especially when we were trying to give people vaccine shots or we were trying to explain to them about contact tracing and quarantines and isolation. It was so helpful. And so we do have people who could be available. So if people let me know in advance, I'm happy to make sure we have that.
And how do they contact Town Hall?
Sure, they can call the town manager's office or they can email me at townmanager@northandoverma.gov.
I love how you're like this.
Trying to think.
I do the same exact thing. I'm like, all right, am I giving my personal email address or am I at work and I'm giving my work email address? And you got to kind of sit back and go, what is my email address?
Does anyone know their phone number anymore? I couldn't give you that. I'm sorry.
I don't even have a home phone anymore. It's all four of us in the house have our own cell phones.
Things have changed.
Things have changed a lot. Now, so we talked about different ways to be able to access town meeting. One of the other things I heard from last year's town meeting from some people who had some mobility impairments was it was difficult for them to navigate down that field to be able to get to town meeting, to be able to then fully participate. I mean, we're used to being in an auditorium with, concrete floors and carpeting to help make sure that people don't slip and fall. So if you have some sort of a mobility impairment, it's easier, for lack of a better term. But if you have somebody who's either in a wheelchair or walks with a cane or a double cane or crutches or anything that might be mobility impaired in their lives, they found it extremely difficult to be able to participate.
Okay. So I was actually talking to the Bedford town manager about this because they are having town meeting this week or next week and they're facing the same issues, right? And so her and I were trying to brainstorm some ideas for that. So again, if you think you're going to have mobility issues, if you let me know, I can have someone meet you in the parking lot to assist you. We are going to have some closer parking. And we will again have a tented off area for people who are, because the heat is too much, or they don't want to be in the direct sun. One thing that she had said to me that I thought was so interesting was that she had people who had complained about the chairs, that they felt like the chairs on the turf felt a little bit uneasy, which I thought was interesting. And so one solution that she had come up with is if someone had let them know in advance, they had actually put a piece of plywood under the chair. And that had evened it out. And so if people call us and let us know, we're happy to work with them. I know that the moderator and I have had a lot of conversations about how do we make sure people feel like they can come. Some of those solutions have been having a blanketed area where people with children can bring their children and sit kind of in the back of town meeting and still be participating when we can't have babysitting services. Or they don't have anywhere to leave their kids. kids on a Tuesday night at 6 o'clock, right? It's tough. And so, I welcome people to let us know so that we can work with them.
That's fantastic. And I know Mark's been, the chair, my goodness, my brain isn't working these days. Moderator, thank you. I haven't had my tea yet, so I apologize to everybody. Mark has been the moderator for town meeting now for years, and he's always very approachable.
Yes.
So I'm sure that has not changed.
100%. He's always happy to work and help, and we've got such a good team. Last year's town meeting was a big lift. It took a lot of teamwork from the schools to the town to Mark, and we were able to pull it off, and I think this year it'll be even better.
That would be fantastic. I look forward to when we're inside again, because I'm much more of an inside person than an outside person, but that's me personally.
I brought my own sunscreen, so I feel you.
But no, I look forward to being able to participate this year. So you said the senior center is open again.
Yes.
And we had spoken, I guess the AARP has some sort of a program that you had hoped that the Council on Aging and our commission would be interested in working together on.
Sure.
Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Yeah. Well, first, we have a new senior center director who's starting June 14th.
Oh.
Her name is Kathy Shelp, and she's joining us from Groton. This is probably the first time we've really talked about her publicly, so this is exciting.
Yay!
She has so much experience, and one of the things that she really is experienced in, I think, is collaboration. That's one of the things I heard from even her references. She talked about one of her references was the fire chief, and talked about how well they worked together with the different committees and commissions. And that excites me. And I was telling you that one of the things that I had done in my last community was this livable community assessment. And so it really started as an AARP program. And what it started out was, are you age friendly? And it evolved into so much more, right? And it was not, are we age friendly, but are we livable for everyone? Because North Andover should be a place where everybody can live, everybody can work, everybody can access our parks and our trails. And so we were able to really study that holistically. And we did it through an AARP grant. We ended up getting a Livability Community Award, which was amazing. And we partnered actually with UMass to do the study. And it's something I would love to bring here. I think that we do a good job of being accessible, but we could do so much more. And it's not just accessibility to people who are elderly or accessibility to people with families. It's everyone. Making sure that everyone has the access to enjoy everything that North Andover has to offer is really important.
I can think off the top of my head, and I happen to just see it on the agenda for the select board. I believe it's this coming week. A lot of people are starting to put in requests to be able to use Town Common. And that sort of goes also back to what I was just talking to you about town meeting, where the Common, beautiful place, stunning, gorgeous, but for some people, particularly with mobility issues, that's very difficult to navigate, and then they have a hard time participating.
Right.
What can be done there? Can you, what can you think of that might be able to be done there so that people can feel, oh, gee, they're having this program, I'd really like to be able to participate, but for my wheelchair,
Right.
or but for my cane, I can't, so now I can't participate.
Well, some of the things that we talk about internally, right, is making sure that you have correct accessibility ramps, right, or making sure you have accessibility ramps that don't just end and take you nowhere, which is a huge problem, right?
Yes.
It's great to have sidewalks, and we all love them, and we all want more of them, but when they just suddenly end, right, it's not fair to somebody who's in a wheelchair, or somebody who's pushing a stroller, right? You hear from both that it's a problem.
Or even somebody who, has a vision impairment.
Yes. Exactly. So, finding ways to make connections is really important. I think that would help at the Common as well, right? If you had the correct connections, that somebody could feel confident in being able to go to the Common, being able to get to the Common, I think that would help a lot with the participation, right? And so that's something that we talk about a lot. How do we make those connections? How do we make sure that we're really making it multimodal in so many ways, right? It's more than just being able to have bike paths, right, or being pedestrian friendly. It's also being ability friendly. And so, we talk about that a lot We have the Complete Streets, I think, on this board's agenda as well, which is a multimodal policy that we'd be creating for some of the DPW work we'd be doing.
Okay.
Where it's all about pedestrian friendliness, all about accessibility, and really thinking about that in the designs that we do for our roadways and that we see in subdivisions, right? Because all of those connections matter, especially when you're a kid trying to get to school, right?
Oh, both of my kids went to Atkinson, and my daughter went to NAMS, my son is at NAMS, and I had been complaining for years, trying to cross Mass Ave, especially for middle school kids, when there is no crossing guard, was like taking their lives in their hands.
We are finally getting a crosswalk there.
Well, there is a
Which is great.
crosswalk to get across Mass Ave, but what I loved was when they did the whole, working on the 125
Yes.
Mass Ave intersection, they finally added the bumps at the end of, or beginning, depending upon what direction you're coming from, the crosswalk ramps, so that you knew where you were at.
Yep.
They added to cross Mass Ave in front of the Atkinson,
And that's going back in that crosswalk.
a
which is
light,
Yep.
similar to what they have, not hanging over, but similar to what they have over on 114 by
Activated,
Merrimack College. Yep. So that, it's not just a sign in the middle of the street that people are just
great. No.
zooming by.
Right.
Are we going to find more of those types of things around town?
Yes, for sure. I mean, the crosswalks are, to me, a major issue. And so we've been talking about how we make those even more reflective so that they're more noticeable,
Yep.
right? Line painting is tough in New England. We line them and they fade pretty
Yep.
quick. But there's certain new technologies that we can use to make those crosswalks more noticeable. And I think that's a really important tool.
Yes.
Because it does take longer for somebody who has ability issues to get across the street, right? And so, we want to make sure people can see them in the day, in the night, all the time.
Yes.
And so we're really focusing on that, on trying to figure out ways to make our access more safe.
Especially, I would think a couple more down Mass Ave going towards 495 as well, because you've got several crosswalks that the kids are crossing, or pedestrians of any age are crossing, maybe to walk over to the library or what have you, and they probably could use something a little bit more than just some line painting, which, as you said, in New England is kind of hard to maintain.
Well, the Complete Streets philosophy, you look at other things too that would be a tool in decreasing speed, right? So we think about bump outs, the use of bump outs, right? If the road becomes narrower at the end, people tend to slow down as they come to it, right? And so there's all kinds of engineering tools now that go beyond just speed bumps and go beyond the crosswalks that will help us make sure that our access is more safe, which is great.
And I just made a mortal enemy of my husband because you're making the streets slower now. But no, that's great. I'm glad to hear that you're seeing those things, you're hearing those concerns, and you're looking forward. It's not going to happen overnight, but you're looking forward to make sure things happen, as safely as possible.
We're certainly trying, and a lot of that is actually in our master plan too, and we have this master plan implementation committee who has been kind of ticking off a lot of the master plan goals, right? And Complete Streets was actually one of the first ones they brought forward. So
Fantastic.
everybody's kind of working together with these common goals, which is so nice.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Another thing you had mentioned to me, homebound vaccinations of COVID. What can you tell me about that?
So we've actually done a great job in town of getting our seniors and our homebound vaccinated. But there's still people who have not yet been vaccinated, and I want to encourage them to call my office or email my office or call Caroline Ibbotson, our amazing public health nurse, because we can help you get an appointment with the state if you're homebound when they'll come in and help you get vaccinated. We're happy to help anybody who needs an appointment to get vaccinated. There's been appointments available every day in Methuen, in Haverhill, in Lawrence, some at our CVS right here in North Andover.
I was going to say, are they doing that in
they're
town?
doing them in town. And so there's been a lot of places where we've seen appointments available, and there's been a lag in people getting vaccinated now. But if you are homebound and you need help getting a vaccine, please reach out, because the state does have a program, and we are happy to help you get set up with that.
And if you're not homebound, but you would just prefer to be vaccinated at home for whatever reason, can they call you for that assistance as well?
They can. So there is mechanisms where you have somebody who maybe has some type of underlying condition, is a caretaker for someone and doesn't feel comfortable going out in public. We don't want someone who hasn't gone to the grocery store in a year to suddenly have to go to a hospital to get vaccinated. I understand those fears are there. And so that Homebound program that's being run from the state, it really is inclusive. And so if people let us know that they need assistance, we're happy to help.
Just so everybody knows, it's available.
It is available.
So if for whatever reason somebody doesn't feel comfortable getting vaccinated outside, it is available to them.
Absolutely.
Now, there's a lot of talk about, I know the universities and the colleges are starting to mandate vaccinations. For people who might be questioning about going into town hall, are town hall employees being mandated? Are school employees being mandated to be vaccinated?
So we haven't mandated anyone to be vaccinated yet. I have found that most of our employees have wanted to get vaccinated on their own, certainly aware of our own health. We're allowed to be in the building at 50% right now, per the state. So we have 2 cohorts. So if anything did happen, we would be able to continue to maintain town services. August 1st, all those restrictions are lifted.
Right.
So we'll all be kind of back together again. So we've encouraged all of our employees to get vaccinated, but we have not required anyone to.
And for people who need to drop things off at town hall but don't want to step in, that box in front of town hall on Main Street, that's still being monitored?
Daily, yeah, so multiple times a day, really. No, so don't be afraid to use the box. We're still picking it up multiple times a day. And really, the majority of our services are now available online. One of the good things, the silver linings about COVID, is that we really were able to up our online presence thanks to our IT department, and almost every bill, et cetera, permits, everything can pretty much be handled online now. Dog licenses, pretty much everything. So,
I need to fix up our dog license. My son's dog actually is being trained as a service animal, a psychiatric service animal.
That's amazing. Have you met our therapy dog?
No, I have not.
Oh, Gibbs.
I am thinking maybe we need to do that before Bobo goes into the school so that they can get to know each other.
Gibbs is fabulous. Gibbs has been spending a lot of time in our school with Officer Cam. I've seen his interactions with some kids who were afraid of dogs who now are walking him on a leash.
That's
it's amazing.
fantastic.
He's a golden retriever, but he does not hesitate to get right up in your lap, even if you're wearing all black. So I learned that lesson the hard way. But he is beautiful, and we are so happy to have him on the team.
They say golden retrievers are probably among the best service animals.
I believe it. It's very calming.
They really are, and especially the golden animals. Yeah, you don't want to be wearing dark colors around.
You know what else he's helping us with? He's helping us with our goose problem at the pond. So if you remember correctly, last year we had to close the pond a lot.
Yeah.
And a lot of that was actually due to geese. And he's been running the beach for us and helping us with our goose problem.
And scaring them away.
So he's multifaceted, therapy dog and a goose scarer. We'll take it.
Hey, that works. That works a lot. We're still also, I noticed we're still also building out some of those trails.
Yes.
Those trails. Are we going to see those trails also more accessible?
I would love to see that. I know some of the new ones that we've done have been and seem to really be helpful. And there's a lot of things you can do with boardwalks to continue that. So that's something we certainly would love to work with the commission on.
I know that can get extremely expensive, but however, I've also walked in lots of different places. I don't know if you're aware, but several times I've walked in a 3-day walk for the Komen Foundation.
It's amazing.
60 miles over 3 days, and it takes an awful lot of training.
Sure.
And a lot of times our team would go to these trails, and they'd be, cement, so you weren't tripping over rocks and sticks, and so they were really done up, and I know that takes a lot of money.
Yeah. The surface matters a lot. I mean, we see it too at our playgrounds, right? And we're trying to move away from mulch and making sure that we have the correct paths, right? So that everyone can access our different equipment. The same goes for our walking trails, right? Making sure that we have a surface that everyone can safely maneuver is really important.
Now, I actually participated recently. A Mass Office on Disability presentation was about outdoor dining. Now during COVID. I have to ask, and hopefully I'm not putting you on the spot, have those been reviewed to make sure that they are fully accessible for mobility, and for people who may not have mobility issues, but still need a little extra space to maneuver.
Sure. So if you want to do outdoor dining in North Andover and you don't have it as a permanent fixture, there's a pretty comprehensive permit application, and it is reviewed by the building inspector to make sure that it's correct passageways. So you have to have the correct amount of feet so that people can pass. So yes, everyone is actually not just reviewed by the file, but also they go physically to make sure that that distancing is available so that people can fit.
And if there's a concern at a particular restaurant, who can somebody call to say, I just didn't feel comfortable because there wasn't seating available in a way that my wheelchair, for example,
Absolutely.
or that my cane, because I have seen a couple of the restaurants where it's picnic tables.
Mm-hmm.
And picnic tables are nice, but if you have a hard time maneuvering a picnic table, then you have a hard time
Of course.
being comfortable eating. So if somebody goes to a restaurant, who should they call if they have a concern?
Sure.
Because the management at the restaurant may not understand.
Yeah. So Paul Hutchins is our building inspector. He's fabulous. I cannot say enough good things about him. He'd be the first person you would call, and likely it would we'd come at it with the team. So you'd have the health inspector, and you'd also perhaps, in many instances, have fire prevention as well. Because if you're having an issue where a wheelchair is not able to adequately fit,
Yep.
it's more likely than not there's actually a fire code issue as well.
Exactly. On top of, I would assume, a health care issue, because people at the restaurants, even when you go to an inside seating arrangement, every other, we went to one restaurant a couple of weeks ago and they had the plexiglass in between. It wasn't here in town, but they had the plexiglass in between the little booths that you wouldn't have normally had otherwise. And it was still every other table that was being utilized, which is, if you're looking for something a little cozier, it's actually nice.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to get to that point.
I think we all have a new idea of personal space now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we do. I'm trying to go through my brain. Were there any other issues that you wanted to discuss that you feel are important for the commission to know about?
I can tell you a little bit that we're trying desperately to get the new senior center built. I think it's going to be a great site for all of our seniors, however able they are, because we're going to have an elevator and it's going to be easier access. I know that this is easy to access, but not always simple. It really has a lot of twists and turns within that building, right? So, a lot of small doorways. It's an old building, and our new building is really going to be so welcoming for our seniors. So we're really excited about that. And we are also really focused right now, and you and I have talked about this, on all of our residents' social and emotional well-being.
Yes.
So one thing that I really wanted to stress is that we have an amazing community support coordinator. Her name is Deanna Cruz. She works out of the police department, and she's a resource for all of us, whether it's just somebody that you need for advice or somebody who can help you get a referral. She's so easy to talk to, one of those people that you feel comfortable with immediately, and I don't want residents to hesitate to reach out to her right now. I think that with COVID, it's been difficult. We're all emerging with kind of new anxieties, right, into this new world and figuring out where we fit in and how we safely fit in. And we've all been home for a long time.
Yes.
And so the stresses have been different, right? I know people who are nervous to come back to work. I know people who are nervous to reemerge as who they are now, right? So please don't hesitate to reach out to her. She's a wonderful resource to the community. And we're so lucky to be able to have that in town.
What sort of procedures, processes, goals can she help people with?
Sure. So a lot of the time she gets called when someone's in crisis, right?
Okay.
And so is it a hoarding situation, right? Or is it somebody who's in an abusive relationship, or somebody who doesn't have food, or someone who doesn't have a place to sleep tonight, right? And a lot of the time she's kind of in crisis mode, but she can also help in a resident who hasn't gotten to that crisis mode yet, right? Who feels themselves cycling out of control, who needs someone to step in early on to tell them how to get resources, how to connect with whoever it is they need. And so, whether you're in a crisis, which we can support, or you feel like maybe you're moving towards a crisis, we're here to help with all of those.
Which is fantastic, because I can tell you from a personal level, my son, because of COVID, has been in and out of the hospital with mental health issues. and there aren't enough beds,
No.
which I understand is not something that the town can necessarily do. But if people have this resource, it may be able to help as a stopgap measure to maybe help them not to have to get to that point.
Absolutely, yes. And we can help make connections that maybe, a mother or father do not have, right? We don't always, as parents, have the answers, right?
Exactly.
We wish we did, but it's not that simple, right? And oftentimes we're so close to what's happening, right, that it's hard to manage. And I think, we have to kind of let go of the stigma, right? We're at a point right now where there's a lot of people who are suffering. And, I used to say in my last community that you never know what's happening behind someone's door, right?
Exactly.
It may look perfect from the outside, but when you're on the inside, right, it can be really, really hard. And so I think people need to feel like they can come forward and ask for help, and she can help guide you to where you need to be.
Now, for some people are afraid to go to the police.
Of course.
For a variety of different reasons. How could we connect them with her if they're afraid to go to the police?
Okay.
Is she a uniformed cop? Can she come in plain clothes if it makes somebody feel better that way?
She's certainly not a uniformed police officer. I will say I've been so impressed with our police department through the whole pandemic. They've been just so caring, and they've started to use Deanna as a resource too, right? Because a lot of the time when someone comes in who maybe is in a crisis mode where it could be criminal, we don't need to take it that way. We could go to Restorative Justice. We can figure out other ways to help people before it escalates, right? And so Deanna's been a great tool, and Chief Gray and I talk about this sometimes, where before maybe we would have struggled with how to deal with the situation. One that comes to mind for me is a gentleman who had dementia and had become violent, right? And so the woman comes in and she's saying, my husband's become violent and I don't know what to do. And instead of it becoming a criminal matter, she's able to step in, right? And so we want more of that. That's so important, right, to avoid that
Especially
system.
where you're talking a situation, if he has dementia, he probably was not actively thinking in the same way you and I are talking right now of being violent towards his wife.
Right,
That was probably the last thing on his mind.
Or a child with autism who's become violent. There's so many different ways, right? Things that we see every day that I'm sure a lot of people in North Andover wouldn't believe or know about, right?
Yes.
But she's been an asset to the police department and helping to mitigate those issues without them becoming criminal. And so we've really tried to kind of turn to this really community policing basis, right, where it's a lot about education, it's a lot about how we can build relationships, and Chief Gray has been such a huge proponent of that. I've been so proud to see that from him because it's something that's really important to me, and I think it's something that's really important to our community. But if you want to reach Deanna, you can always call, you can email her, you can email me, and I can help you get in touch with her too. You can email her right from our website, and she's a great asset to anyone who really is just looking for assistance.
That's fantastic, because sometimes you think small town, we're small town.
Yeah.
And so you think small town, what resources can be available to me? We're a small town, we're not a big city. And what it turns out is through your office, you actually are taking what people think small town wouldn't have for resources, and you've actually put them together during a time when we need them most.
We do.
We truly need them most of all. So thank you, and thank you for coming on the show to tell us all about this. I think it's fantastic. I've learned so much about what you've put together that I actually wish I had known about when my son started having problems. It might have been beneficial to my family.
We're always happy to help, so just reach out. We're lucky we have such a supportive select board who has really been passionate about the community, and that's really gone such a long way. For me, it's a joy to work here. So thank you for having me today.
Thank you again. I really do appreciate it. Maybe we can have you on board in maybe another 6 months, and you can tell us about how we've come out of COVID. Maybe.
Fingers crossed.
Maybe, and what things we're taking positive out of it to continue and to grow.
I'd love that.
I would too. Hopefully we can get to that point. Thank you as well for joining us again on Ability Assistance. Please join us again next month when we will learn more about the North Andover Youth Center and how they have made it accessible to children of all sorts of abilities. Until then, thank you.